J2ME. So these three are different editions in Java. These three things, different editions in Java, where each edition will be dealing with different types of applications development. So when it comes to the first edition, you'll be having standalone applications which you can develop. The second edition would be web applications, and the third one would be mobile applications. So when it comes to the first one, it is your standard version. It is the enterprise version. The third one is the micro edition, where it's Java for micro devices. So these are the three different editions in Java. After that, you have the Android, which is dependent on Java programming. So when it comes to Android, so now the question is, do you really require all these three editions in Java, or what are the concepts which you actually require from this entire hierarchy here? So when it comes to J2 SE, we require some concepts from J2 SE, where we'll be having OOPS concepts, object-oriented programming. Next, we require the concept of threads. Next, we'll be having the concept of exception handling. So these three are the important things which we need to know before taking your Android programming. And the other one, Enterprise Edition, will be having the concept of web services, which we will be dealing in Android. So these web services you need not know upfront. So this entire web services will be teaching you in the entire Android course here. And coming to J2 SE, what are the different topics necessary, and why these topics are necessary in this particular J2 SE here. So as the Android programming is a Java based programming, we'll be using the same OOPS concepts, something like creating classes, creating interfaces. So all these things we'll be using in your Android. And coming to the next point of exception handling, why exception handling is important in Android, and to be specific, to mobile applications. So let us take a simple example of a media player kind of application, or what we generally call as the music player on the device. So this music player, if you take, it will be accepting some formats which it can play. So let us take, this is accepting some .mp3 format, and then a .mp4 format or MPEG4 format here. Now we are trying to play a format which is not supported by the music player on your mobile. So it is not supporting, so obviously your track cannot be played, and you will not be able to listen to the track. So in that case, it is generally an unexpected condition which is happening on the music player. Now if the music player is not able to tell you that something has happened, or it is unable to play the track provided by the user, so it should give the message to the user saying some format is not supported. So if this message is not displayed to the user, so normally users, they will be thinking that there is something wrong with the music player, or something wrong with the speakers of the mobile, etc. So this is what is meant by the exception handling. So technically, the music player not supporting the format is a technical thing. You are going to convert the technical thing into a simple message which the user can understand. That means every exception that's expected to rise in the background, your application is going to handle it and it is going to present to the user in a more meaningful way here. Next, let us take a similar example of your SMS application. You'll be having incoming SMS. So generally, if you see your old mobiles, normally your inbox will be able to handle certain n number of messages. Now, if n plus 1 message is expected to come into your inbox, but your inbox is full, it will give you a message that, so please delete some of the messages on your inbox. So it is nothing but a simple exception which is happening in the background. Your application is not able to receive the message, or your mobile is not able to receive the message. So that particular technical thing, you need to convert it into a simple, more meaningful message. So for this reason, this exception handling is very important in Android, and when it comes to mobile applications, it's very important. It need not be Android. It can be an iOS application or a BlackBerry application or a Windows application, anything. Why? Because suppose, let us take a simple comparison here. Suppose you take the Gmail web application, which will be opened when you type some www.gmail.com. Normally on this page you will be having some username option, some password option, and you have a sign in button or a login button. So let us take, this is a simple HTML page which you will be able to see when you type some gmail.com. Let us suppose if there is a mistake on the HTML page, some spelling mistakes or there, some alignment problem is there on the www.gmail.com home page, what the developer will do is he will correct the page and the page will be hosted on a server from where we can access the www.gmail.com. So but when it comes to your mobile application, so suppose if you are hosting the page on the server, from everywhere you type, from anywhere you type, or from any browser you type www.gmail.com, the same page will be visible. So one time hosting and placing the content, so from everywhere the changes will get reflected. So that is a simple web application, a browser based application. Now take the mobile application. So normally you will be downloading applications from the Google Play Store, something like you will be downloading some games or some applications like WhatsApp or Facebook. So generally you will be downloading the applications. So once you download the application onto your mobile, if there is something wrong on the mobile application, suppose today 100 users are using some X application downloaded from Play Store. So in that case, if the 100 users are using the same application, tomorrow if there is an update, this X application has updates, so all the 100 users, they need to again install the update. So every time if you keep on giving updates of the same application, so normally one day the user will not be happy with your application, taking it granted that every week, every day I'm getting some updates of this application, fixing all the bugs and all these things. So many times all these types of errors on your application will not be accepted by the user. So at the time of development of the application itself, you need to be thorough with all these exception handling mechanisms, and all these mechanisms are to be put in place. So that is the importance of exception handling. So now when you take the third concept of threads. So why threads are important on mobile devices or micro devices? Right. So normally when you run applications on a desktop or a server, if you take the characteristics of a server or a desktop in terms of some memory or processor, the display, everything. So, and when you compare them with a mobile, everything will be less when compared with a huge server where you will be hosting web applications. So now the same application, when you are running on a mobile where everything is limited for you, the memory will be limited, the processing power will be limited, the display size will be limited. You have a very small screen, but when it comes to a desktop, you have a very big screen, something like this which you are seeing now. So all these types of things will happen on your mobile. Now when you compare the two things, desktop and then the mobile, when it comes to processing power, which will be responsible for running the applications on the mobile. So if you start all the process at the same time, normally the mobile will not be able to handle all the things. So for that we should implement the concept of threads in Android. So let us take a simple login page. We will be entering the username, we will be entering the password. What happens generally is when you click on the sign in button, or you take your Facebook application, which we most commonly use, if you click on the sign in button, once you enter the username and password, a request will go to the Facebook server. Along with it, it will take the username and the password which you have entered. So normally when a request is sent, until the time you get the response, it will take some time. It will not happen in a second. So depending on your network strength, depending on the signal strength, depending on the server availability, depending on how fast the server is processing your request, it will take some time. So let us take, it is taking 2 minutes time for the request and response processing. Now meanwhile, you will be having the user interface where the user will be looking at. So this request response mechanism, it will happen in the background. This business logic the user cannot see, but the user interface is the one which the user will be watching. So normally on this you will be loading a progress dialog kind of thing. You will be saying that connecting, please wait, some kind of message which you will be giving. And if you take these two things, the request response thread and then the loading thread. So let us take this is T2, let us take this is T1. Now if you see here, T1 will be connecting to the server, it will give you some response. Once T1 knows that it got the response back from the server, it should tell to T2 that I got the response, you please stop loading and take the user interface to the next level, or take the user to the next level. That is one case. Let us take the second case. T2, the loading process will be generally having a timeout. So watch for 2 minutes. You did not get the response from T1. Automatically unload the progressing bar and tell to T1 that you stop trying connecting to the server. So if the synchronization is not there between T1 and T2 now, the T1 will be continuously trying to connect to the server. T2 will be continuously loading on the user interface. So the synchronization should be present between T1 and T2, and both of them should be done with the help of the concept of threads here. So threads always makes the process lightweight, and it will help the application to run fast in less amount of time. So these are the three things which we require in basic core Java environment. So the basics of Java. And so when it comes to the web services concept, we'll be discussing the web services in detail. One minute. Right. So when it comes to Android, we'll be dividing this Android into two modules, the module 1, then the module 2. So the module 1 will take around 20 days time. The module 2 will take around 20 days time. So let us see what we'll be covering in module 1 and what we'll be covering in module 2. So when it comes to the module 1 here, so we'll be starting with how to install Android. So we require different softwares which are all open source. You can happily install everything on your laptop or your home desktop, and then you can do the things. And for this you require the Java installation, and then we require the Android SDK installation. So I'll be telling you how to install everything and get the setup ready for Android. So after this we'll be discussing about the Android architecture. So architecture is something where you will be having different layers in the architecture, where you will be having different components in each and every layer. Suppose take the example of the Facebook camera application, which will help you to upload a picture on your Facebook wall. So the camera application is will be on the top end. Your user interface is on the top end, but the camera application, which is actually taking the picture, the physical hardware on the device, the lens, the camera, and all these things will be at the bottommost layer. In between your application and then the physical hardware, which is nothing but the camera, you'll be having different layers in between. So the drivers kind of layers in between, the different types of frameworks which will be present in between the topmost layer and the bottommost layer, we'll be discussing in the Android architecture. So totally, what are the different layers, what are the different components, how each and every component will be talking to each other for the application to function, how different layers will be coordinating with each other. All these things we'll be discussing in the Android architecture. So once you are done with the Android architecture, we'll be having the Android first application which we will be building. So when you are constructing any application, when you are going to build any application, you'll be having different parameters which you'll be configuring. Suppose if you are building the Android application, you'll be having the name of the application which you need to give, then the version of the application which you are going to develop, then you have something called as the logo for the application. So normally every application will be having a name and then the logo shown on the device. So I'll just show you the real device scenario. Right, so this is the real device connected to my laptop, and if you see here, this is the logo for the application, this is the label for the application. So if you go for some Skype here, this is the icon for the application, this is the label for the application. So when you are constructing the application, when you are building the application, you will be having some basic parameters which you need to give initially to build the application, and then your application will be built. So in this we'll be looking at what are the different parameters to be given to build the first application, and after this, once the application basic thing is completed, how we are going to test the application. So normally to test the application we'll be having something called as Android virtual device, which is called as an AVD. So why this AVD is necessary is, suppose if you take a web application, you can test the application on a browser, but the web application, the mobile application will not be like this. Why? Because if you are developing some application today, the test environment will be huge. Suppose you want to test the application on a 7-inch tablet PC. If you take a 7-inch tablet PC, you'll be having different Android versions running. A 7-inch tablet PC coming from Samsung will have many different versions running. A 7-inch tablet PC coming from HTC will be having many different versions running. You take HTC, you take Samsung, Carbon, all these things will be providing different Android devices coming with different configurations. So now if you take all these configurations, you cannot buy all the devices and you cannot test the application on every real device. So for that you will be having the concept of AVDs which you can use and which you can test your application. So AVDs are nothing but a virtual environment which will help you to test the application on a device according to your configuration. So we will be looking at how to build an AVD and how to test the application on the AVD. So I'll just show you how the AVD will be shortly. So that is the Android virtual device part, and once you are done with testing of the application, next we'll be looking at Android technical components, which is very important. So if you take any programming language, you will be having some basics of about the programming language upon which the rest of the programming will be built. So similarly in Android you will be having some technical concepts, some building blocks where your Android programming will be dependent on. So I'll tell you an example of a simple building block which is called as an activity. An activity in general English you mean that something is happening, but here an activity is nothing but a simple user interface. You take a contact book. Let us take you are having a contact book application. So or you take this particular phone application. This is one user interface. Technically it is called as an activity. you open this particular contacts. This is another user interface. This is called another activity. You take this particular groups here. So this is another user interface. You go to contact, select some contact from this, and this is another user interface. If you see, the design for each and every user interface is totally different. So it depends on how you are going to design your application and how your coding part will be once you start the application. So similar to that, you'll be having different technical components in Android, which we'll be looking in detail. So after the Android technical components, you'll be having Android user interface building. So how to construct the user interfaces and what are the different controls you have available to you to develop the user interfaces. Something like we'll be seeing it, some text boxes, some check boxes, some list views, some gallery components, grid views. So all these things, starting from a simple user interface where you can input something, coming to a complicated user interface where you can build something. So all these things we'll be discussing in the Android user interfaces. So after this, you'll be having customization of user interfaces. So what is meant by customization of an user interface means, suppose let us see an example of a simple list view kind of thing. Right, so I'll just take the phone book now. I'll take the contact book, which is nothing but a list of items. If you just scroll down, you'll be getting the list of contacts. If you see the layout here, left side you are having the icon, right side you are having an icon, and in middle you are having some label here. This is one style. Go to the call log and see something here. You are having an icon, you are having an icon on the right side also, but the center data is different. That means the same list of items is customized to give you the look and feel of different designs. So that is called as the customization of user interfaces. So every user interface component you can customize according to our own designs. So that is what is called as customization part. So after this, we'll be looking at animations, we'll be looking at styles, and then themes, which brings beauty to the application. Simple colors, simple backgrounds, styles, themes, everything which you build. So towards the end of the first module, we'll be covering all these concepts in your Android. So once you complete this particular first module, you'll be able to build applications, something like a simple calculator kind of application, or a simple calendar kind of application, or if you take an alarm kind of application. So all these types of applications you'll be able to build. So when it comes to the first module. So coming to the second module of Android, so which will take the next 20 days time. So module 2 will be generally covering the APIs, different APIs in Android. Right. So what is meant by an API and what are the different APIs which we'll be covering in the second module here. Right. So coming to the first API, we'll be having offline storage, where we'll be having a database which is called as SQLite. So it is a lightweight relational database where you can store data offline on the mobile device. We take the example of contact book where you will be storing different contacts. So your contact book stores data offline on the device. Every time it doesn't require some internet to connect to some database, get some data from the remote server. So you turn off your device, you again turn on the device, you store some contact. Every time you open the contact book, everything stored in the database will come into your contact book and you can watch all the contacts. So whenever you want to store something offline on the device, you will be having a facility with the help of a database which is called as SQLite. So in this API, we will be looking at how to create the databases, how to do all the transactions on the database. That means if you want to insert something, if you want to update something, if you want to delete, if you want to query, that means if you want to fetch something, everything we will be looking in this particular SQLite database. Connected with this SQLite database, we will be having the concept of content providers in Android. So what is meant by a content provider in Android? Which is nothing but sharing of data across applications will be facilitated with the help of content providers. So what is the benefit of content providers is, let us take, we don't have the concept of content providers today in Android. So let us take phone book. It is having its own database. It is storing some X contact. You take SMS application. It should have its own database and it should also store the X contact. You take WhatsApp. It should maintain its own database and the same X contact is to be stored on the WhatsApp database. So if the data sharing is not available here, every application should have its own database and every application should have some space available to store its own set of data. Now the same X contact, if you observe here, it is getting replicated 3 times. First one in the phone book, second one in the SMS application, third one in the WhatsApp application. So now if you take a mobile where memory is very limited, you cannot have replication of data. So for that reason, phone book will maintain all the contacts. From SMS application, access the phone book database. From WhatsApp application, access the phone book database. From some Viber application, access the phone book database. So that sharing of databases across applications, these are all different applications. So that facility will be done with the help of content providers. So you will be having the concept of content providers in Android, which will help you to share the data across different applications on the device. Right. So after the sharing of databases, the next one will be having location based services. So these are called as LBS here, and to get the current locations where you are placed, you will be having the location based services. You will be having two technologies in this. The first one would be the GPS based tracking. The second one would be the network based tracking. So we'll be looking at how to get the positions of the device based on GPS and how to get the positions of the device based on network, which means the service providers. So these are nothing but the service providers. Airtel, Idea, whatever you are using, there is a service provider. And this location based services, suppose if you take GPS based tracking, it will give you some latitude and then some longitude. These are nothing but some simple numbers which you can see. You have nothing to do with this, all these numbers here. The front end for application to get Google Maps data, what are the different controls we can have on the Google Maps space. So everything we'll be looking at in the Google Maps. So these two things come in combination, location based services and then the Google Maps integration. So these are the first two APIs which we'll be covering. And coming to the next set of APIs, we'll be having the concept of web services. So exactly what is meant by a web service and why you are going to use this particular web services. So to be simple, web services are nothing but URLs which are ready and we can access the data. Access means either you can send the data or you can retrieve the data here. So let us take your Facebook application. You cannot store all the account information related to your account locally on the device. You cannot store all your friends' contact locally on the device. Facebook application will maintain a server where all the users' account information will be maintained, and from the Facebook application we'll be accessing the Facebook information. So with the help of web services we'll be doing this. So why the concept of web services is actually built is, if you take a mobile, the advantage what you have in mobile is portability. The disadvantage what you have in mobile is storage. You cannot store everything on your mobile. But if you take a server, the advantage what you have is storage, but if you take a server you cannot move it everywhere you go. So what happens is the portability of mobile will be combined with the storage of server. This will be done with the help of the concept of web services. So what happens is the server will be providing the web services, the mobile client will be accessing the web services for the required data here. Right. So this data presentation will be having different types of web services which we'll be looking at, and also we'll be looking at in how many ways the data can be sent from mobile to server and vice versa. So you'll be having, you can use some XML format, or you can use some JSON format, which will be tough for you to understand now, but slowly when you are coming to the concept of web services, we'll be getting all these things. So what are the different ways we'll be transferring the data, how the web service construction part will be, how the consuming part will be, and we'll be looking at a real application scenario, something like a Facebook kind of application, connect to a server, get all the data from your Facebook account and all these things we'll be looking at in this particular web services. And this is a very important concept when it comes to your industry point of view, or you take any applications if you want to build in the near future. It is an important topic to practice, learn, and then get thorough on this particular topic. So after this, we'll be having the concept of multimedia, where you'll be having options to develop some music player or video player kind of applications, where you'll be dealing with audio content, where you'll be dealing with video content, both playing and recording of audio and video content. So along with this, we'll be using the camera API. We'll be looking at how to access the camera and customize the camera according to our own requirements. Customizing means, suppose if you want to open the camera from my application directly in some night mode or directly in some beach mode. So how to access the camera API, how to set all these things programmatically, and how to access the camera directly in that particular configuration. So that is the customization part. And in the same multimedia, you will be looking at text to speech. So generally this is called as TTS, inputting some text, taking some voice out. Opposite to this, you will be having voice recognition, which is opposite to text to speech, giving some voice input, taking some phrases out. So both opposite to each other, we'll be looking at both the things in the multimedia API. So after this, we'll be having the telephony API, which will tell you how to make calls, how to send SMS, how to send MMS, how to send emails from the application, and how to use the SMS manager of your application. So this telephony API is very important. Why? Because suppose if you are playing a game, suddenly there will be a chance that an incoming call may come. So what happens to the game then? It will be paused, data will be saved, something like the score, the level of the game on which you are playing, everything will be saved. That means when these operations can be done is the data saving operations, once your application knows that there is an incoming call on the device. So it is our application responsibility to write the business logic to save all the data when something is happening on the mobile. So in this telephony API, it will tell you how to recognize when there is an incoming call or when an outgoing call on the device, when an incoming message is there. So all these things will be covered in the telephony API here. And after this, we'll be having Bluetooth. We'll be looking at how to access the Bluetooth settings, search process for the remote devices, how to connect to remote devices, how to send the files from one device to another device. So this is the APIs which we will be covering. Databases, Google Maps, GPS, web services, different types of web services, multimedia, telephony, and then the Bluetooth API. So this is the second module which we will be covering. The first module will be totally your basics part. And what is the advantage we have with Android is normally in Android everything is open source and you have different versions in Android, and when you take the user base of Android, if you take the people who are using user base, it's very huge. So Android will give you an option to develop your own applications, and you can place them on the Google Play Store. Either it can be a free application or it can be a paid application. So normally it is the paid application which brings some income from your applications when they are downloaded and installed. Free applications, you have all the option to generate revenue from ads. Paid application means the user has to pay and download the application. It's a direct revenue which you get, and paid application depending on the ads. Now the important thing is how crazy enough your application should be. Suppose you take Orkut and Facebook. So couple of years, 3 years before, everybody of us is on Orkut. Now today everybody is on Facebook. Both the applications are similar to each other. Both are developed on the same concept, social networking. But today everybody is using Facebook, and I don't think anyone is using Orkut. Right. So now the services provided by Facebook are more beneficial. If you take the user interface of Facebook, it will be so simple. Everything will be present on a single page. You can access every component of your account from that particular page. Every update will come to you as soon as the other person is posting it, and everything you can see. But when it comes to Orkut, slightly a different complicated user interface. It will not be much fast when you compare with Facebook. No better improvements years and years, and all these things will come into picture when you compare two different applications. So as we are comparing Orkut and Facebook today, tomorrow the user will also compare your application and the other competent application. So when he is comparing your application with other application, your application should be in such a way that it should provide more number of services. Obviously, the user has to remain on your application, and then he should discard the other application. So the more number of features, the less number of clicks you provide to the user. So you need to, your application is to be built more intelligent, in a more intelligent manner, that everything, it should have the business logic, it should have the intelligence running, and then it should guide the user in such a way. So that is where your application will gain more user base, and you can have a wide publicity on your applications which you are going to develop here. And this course in particular, it will be guided with a real-time project where after completion of the first Android application building, as we are discussing in the first module, so we'll be giving you some templates of the application, how the user interface should look like, how the I'll just show you some. Right, so if you see something like this, right, so this is a simple user interface, this is another user interface, this is another user interface. So I'll be giving you some templates, some assignments kind of thing. I'll explain you the design of the project, the workflow of the project, everything in detail after completing 1 week or some time like 1 week to 10 days. After that, you can start slowly building your application. So first you will be looking at the basics of the applications, next how to apply styles, how to apply themes, and how to integrate different functionalities in your application. All these things slowly you will be looking into. So that is how your project will be taken up parallelly along with your course, and totally it requires some 40-45 sessions, not less than that, because everything it should be taught practically as well as theoretically. So both are important, and it will take a minimum of 40 sessions, and uh, that's the thing. And any other questions you have?
Well, do you have any questions?
Hi, Chetan. This is Prasad.
Yeah. Hello.
Yeah. Do you have any questions? Please do ask.
Questions. Like, what would be the timings?
Timings would be 8:30 to 10 p.m. IST,
Hello.
Indian timings. Hello.
Yeah, the time is going to be
Yeah,
8:30
and
p.m.
is it possible to have sessions in the mornings time?
Morning at what time?
Like between 8 to 12 o'clock?
No, because I'm a working employee.
Yeah, the
It would
same
be
problem is with me. I also, like, I will be working for the second shift between 1 to 10, so I need it in the morning time. So,
okay. Morning time means I can have you in the 5:30 batch in the morning. Hello. Hello. Hello.